Thank you for being here today. I'm Deidre Stevens. I'm with the MBA Plus program. We provide coaching, manage MBA Plus projects, and offer leadership workshops and webinars like this one. This webinar is part of a monthly webinar series sponsored by MBA Plus. This is our last webinar of the semester, but I do hope to bring a few more this summer, so stay tuned for those. All webinar dates and details, including the link to register, are posted on our Canvas site. And recordings of all past webinars are also posted on our Canvas page. We will record this session and we'll post it to Canvas as well. While you're on Canvas, just as Allison and I were just talking about, there's a lot of online content. We have audio workshops, we have all of our webinar recordings. Any event that we've been able to record in the last couple of years is housed there. We also have several asynchronous e-courses that you can take advantage of, including 3 or 4 that have been added this year. So there's a lot of content there. So spend some time, especially as you wrap up the semester, while you still have access to all that material, and take advantage of it. You can use the chat to comment on anything that Allison is presenting today and also ask questions. You can also come off mute to ask questions directly. Just feel free to do so. Your camera is optional today, as you may have already had a long day of virtual classes or meetings, but feel free to keep your camera on as well. I know Allison probably likes to see some friendly faces as she makes her presentation. Today, we're pleased to welcome our wonderful MBA Plus coach, Allison Alford, as she presents Creating Better Slide Decks. I will now turn it over to Allison.
Well, thank you so much, Deidre. I really appreciate that introduction, and I have to say I just love being a coach for the MBA Plus team. It's such a great opportunity, and I would love to see more of these students coaching with me. So take advantage of that wherever you can. Now, you're here today to talk about or learn about creating better slide decks, and I'm going to assume that that's because you might agree with me on this. Many slide decks are very boring. Right? They're boring, or they're long, or they are difficult to make, or you're just confused. How do I make a good one? I've seen good ones, but I don't know how to make a good one. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today. And I want to introduce myself a little bit more and tell you about me. I'm Dr. Allison Alford. I have my master's degree and my PhD from the University of Texas at Austin. And those degrees are in communication studies. And that's sort of a related field, right, to business. I actually studied family communication, and specifically communication between adult daughters and mothers. So you might be saying, well, how did that get you into business? But I started learning about conflict resolution and mediation, which led me over to the business school, where I became a coach in conflict resolution and eventually switched over to a communication coach. So I've been working with the MBA Plus program for the past 5 years. I also run my own firm, Good Talk Communication Consulting, and I'm a clinical assistant professor at Baylor University, just down the road from you. Well, I say just down the road, but who knows where you're located, right? You could be tuning in from anywhere. So I'm glad you're here. Now, we're going to talk about a lot of things today. So this is your roadmap of the activities and items that we're going to learn about. And while we're here, as we go through these slides, I also want to transparently talk to you about the reason for each slide, right? So far we've gone through a title slide, an introduction slide, and now we're at our roadmap slide. And this is an essential slide in a slide deck. Sometimes it's called, it's kind of like the table of contents. You could call this slide the preview. You can call this the agenda. You can say, today we'll learn, or you can, have steps in the process. Whatever you want to call it, but you can call it that. I like roadmap, put a nice visual here of a road for you, right? So double messaging. But the key about the roadmap slide is that it gives the audience an indication of what we'll be talking about. And in this case, I've also numbered the items 1, 2, 6. And so we're going to go through 6 items. Some of you might be thinking, okay, don't care. Aha, that's the one, right? Sometimes in presentations, people are just waiting for a certain item, and you're telling them when it's coming. So you're really giving them the information up front. Another key about presentations, especially when there's no report or written document, is people are bad at remembering things, right? They're not going to be great at remembering something. So if we give them this list in advance, it's going to help them remember. And then as you see, we will note as we go along where we are in the process. That helps people to follow along and remember. Otherwise, people are searching for the punchline, or they're searching for the piece that they care about. So the roadmap is an essential slide in any slide deck. Okay, so let's move on and talk about point number 1, which is bluff. Okay, this is your next essential tip. Bluff stands for bottom line up front. Now, you may have also heard this called blot, right? Which means bottom line on top. But an essential part of the slide deck, of a report, of a presentation, is give the people the information they want to know. What do they want to know? They want to know the proposal. They want to know the recommendation. They want to know the budget, whatever it is that's sort of the punchline of your presentation. Instead of building punchline, we're going to give them the punchline first and then support it with why. Okay, so we want to put the bottom line up front. Here's where we start with our proposal or our recommendations. And this way, our audience is not guessing at what the puzzle pieces are going to become, what's the picture the puzzle will become. We already have the big picture. So this is the big picture. And going forward, we'll give you the small details that make up the big picture. So for today, what is my bluff bottom line up front? My bottom line is it's all about your audience. So today I've thought carefully about who is attending. What do the people who are attending this webinar want to know? And also, what about the audiences of the people who will be making slide decks? What do those audiences want to know? And how can I help you help your audience? Okay, so my bottom line is audience is the winner. They're the king or the queen, and they're the most important thing that we think about as we do a presentation. Okay, so we have a question. Do you run the risk of people disengaging or judging through the rest of the presentation? Well, you might, but that could be a small risk, whereas the greater risk is a bunch of lost people sitting around for 5, 10, 15 minutes, and then at the end, they're confused. So is there a potential risk of bias that you tell someone the proposal or the recommendation, and right at the beginning, they're like, whoa, I don't think so. That's when you would say, well, let me show you how we're going to get there. Let me prove it to you. And the rest of the presentation is about providing that proof. Okay, so we talked about bottom line up front. Now we're going on to the next item, which is what comes before the slides. Now, I could do an entire hour just on this backup and this planning, but that's not what you're here for. But I have to remind you about this essential step that comes before creating our slide deck. Planning is an essential first step. So one of the things I want you to see here that's also an extra element that I've added is that my title should also be a bluff, a bottom line up front. So rather than just having a title or at the top of the slide that says planning, I'm going to give you the full information. Planning is an essential first step. Now today, we're not going to go into detail about planning, organizing, researching, creating a report or an outline, but I need to say to you that that is what you should do first. Too often we get ready to do a report or a presentation and we think, let me just open up the slide deck, and we start doing kind of a brain dump. And when we do a brain dump on the slides, what comes out of that? Well, you're probably not surprised that it's just a lot of stuff dumped in there. And for that reason, a better tool, a better way to do it is to create your report and your outline well before you open the slide deck, and let the slide deck be the result of careful study and improvement on the report or outline. Now, one thing to note here is that if our client or the audience has the report, then that's going to be a slightly different presentation than if it's only an oral presentation, right? Because if they have the report, we're complementing with our presentation what they're seeing in the report. You know, another thing to note is, did they have the report before they came to the meeting, right? Or are they getting it right now? So that's one thing we really want to think about when we're doing our slides. If they don't have the report and it's all oral, it's even more essential that we show the architecture of our thinking. So our slide decks are here. Our slide deck creates an architecture or a framework for the entire message and bolsters that message. And that's why in oral presentations, we sort of give some things away up front that we don't always do in a written format. Now, thinking about whether or not they have the report or not, we say to ourselves, okay, I'm not going to have excessive overlap between the two. It's not helpful to write a beautiful report and then put every single item from the report on the slides and read it to them. So we're thinking instead of a Venn diagram. And so we have the report and we have the slides, and they're going to overlap some. And that place of overlap is where we're really saying these are the most essential things. Then we're going to say some things that maybe are not in the report, and the report is going to say some things that is not in the oral presentation. Okay, so we're moving on, right? We have talked about our bottom line and we've talked about the planning. And now we're getting to one of the key elements, which is our audience and what does our audience want to know. Everything that we're doing is for the audience so that they can understand the things that I have to share. It's all up here in my head. I've done the work. I've got a recommendation. My team is ready to share. How do I share it most effectively? Well, this is where I want to share with you an idea called the you attitude. Now, I have another webinar on this, so if you haven't seen it, you can go look at that and you can have a lot more information about the you attitude. But the you attitude essentially is a way that we can think about, what do you want, right? What does our audience want? I'm going to look at things from the viewer's perspective and think, what do they care about? And I'm going to talk about what they care about, and I'm not going to talk about what they don't care about as best as I can. The you attitude is not just using the word you, but that's a great one to use as well. You will find in this presentation, you will learn. The you attitude emphasizes what the viewer wants to know while also respecting their intelligence. Respecting their intelligence, that goes back to saying what's in the report and what's on the slides. It doesn't respect their intelligence to put things on the slides and then read it to them. It doesn't respect their intelligence to just recreate the report in slide format. And lastly, we have to protect their ego. So while we're thinking of their intelligence, we're also thinking, how can I make sure that they do clearly understand? Because I don't want to present any information that they can't understand or I haven't fully explained. So we're balancing giving them what they need to know and fully explaining it, while also not talking to them or reading to them as if they're children who can't possibly understand or do the homework or read the report. So it's really this balancing act. And this is where we strategically decide how to frame our message. So the slide deck is a strategic presentation of the information that you want to share. Some of the things are on the slides, some of the things I say orally, and perhaps there's also a report, okay? So each one has a different purpose. And for this idea of framing, I want to present to you the idea of curating a story. Now, we don't have time to go into the entire idea behind how to build a story, which would make another great webinar or podcast. Maybe you have one to share with us, Deidre. But the verb curate, I think, is a great way to help us understand what we mean about choosing what goes in the slides and what doesn't go in the slides. Curate means to select, organize, and present the featured content using professional or expert knowledge. Now, here is where you set yourself apart as the expert. The expert determines what is important to share, what needs a visual representation, what needs a definition, like you're seeing on this page, a definition, and what doesn't. And your expertise in curating this slide deck enhances your credibility and your reputation. When we brain dump or repeat or greatly overlap between the report and the slides, we're not showing any ability to curate or to set apart a storyline. So we've lost our persuasive techniques. We've lost our persuasive methods. So it's important to select the key points, the fine points that you want to highlight in any given presentation visually. And then you can say lots of things, right? I'm saying lots of things while you're thinking about curating. And we'll talk about how to put those things in our notes in a few minutes. Okay, so we've come to the part that I think you'll be most excited about, which is how do we actually find the stuff that we want to put in a slide deck and make a slide deck look beautiful. And as I'm talking here, you'll notice that I briefly talk over the transition slides, and it helps to get the viewer's mind on what's coming up next. So design is the intermediary between information and understanding. What that means is that design is not a waste of time. Spending time creating your slide deck actually facilitates learning and understanding. So you are curating or crafting this key points story that the audience wants to know. And it not only helps the audience, that's the you attitude, but it also shapes and shows your credibility and your expertise. So when we spend time crafting a great slide deck, we enhance the branding and we enhance our credibility, but we also create greater understanding of the material. When we brain dump, there's no greater understanding. When we put massive amounts of things on the slides, they're not going to get any more unpacking or extra knowledge or analysis. So our design matters. The first thing I want to talk to you about with design is color schemes. Color schemes are one of your first branding opportunities. Now, I don't know if you noticed that my blue matches my slide deck here, but that was on purpose. I would never want to clash with my branding or my color scheme that I've chosen. So cohesive color scheme appeals to the audience. But how can we level that up? Not just choosing a color scheme that we like, but thinking, can I match the colors of the client? Or can I represent my brand? So these are two things to think about as an MBA student when you're presenting to a client. Should I choose the colors of the client, or should I choose the colors of the MBA program? And the answer is, what do you think that your audience wants? The answer is, it depends on the context and the goals. But right now, it's a great idea to use McCombs colors and branding, because that continues to enhance your credibility as you show others, I am a qualified MBA candidate or MBA graduate. So where can you find the colors that are available for McCombs? Well, you may already know this, but there's an entire webpage devoted to the colors and the branding and the tools that are available to you. And maybe Deidre can put this wiki in the chat for us. But the brand toolkit also includes sample templates. And you're about to find out in a minute, the templates are my favorite thing ever for creating slide decks. So if you want to create a McCombs presentation, you not only can use these slide decks, but you can also make sure that you understand the exact color codes. So for each brand or organization, their colors are very specific, right? It's not just orange, it's burnt orange. And it's not just white, it's, you know, maybe alabaster. And each one has that, I think it's an RGB code. There's several color codes, and they provide those for you in the organization's brand toolkit. So McCombs has one, but many other organizations do too. And when you move to a new organization, they may provide you a toolkit like this and ask you to use this for your presentations. But beyond the colors of the organization, we also need to think about the colors that that will appeal to the audience. And one of the things I want to mention to you is to consider audience accessibility. So color contrast is important. In this presentation, you'll see that I use yellow as a highlight color or a background color just for the slide, the transition slides. But some of our visually impaired audience members may have trouble seeing certain colors. So you want to be aware of that. You want to be aware of the setting, low light, and the contrast, and what are the colors that are most appropriate for the audience. Okay, so let's keep going. And here's where we're going to get our first let's go and see. These are the two websites that you need to know, that I love, that I use all the time. You're looking at templates and images from these websites right now. So what I want you to do is that I want you to go to slidescarnival.com. And I'm going to go there as well. We're going to navigate there together. So you should see my screen change and move over to slidescarnival.com. Now, this website is a website full of free slides templates. And these slides templates on this site are for PowerPoint and Google Slides. And there may be plenty of other slides templates websites, but this is one that I know and use and trust. And that's why I'm presenting it to you. Now, with that said, there are ads on this site. So you want to be careful about clicking onto anything. However, this site is run by one person, and those ads obviously help to support the use of this site. But he creates new templates often, and those templates are organized in such a way that they're easy to search for. So you can use these categories across the top to search by just looking at all or the newest. You can look by color, as we just described. Now I have here some sites. Okay, I put KPMG here. You know, they're blue. We've got their blue right here. Maybe Deloitte, I've got their green right here. And so I may want to look around and find one by color. So I could select by color, green. I can select using any of these areas across the top. Sometimes I think simple is a really good one for business presentations. Now, I am not telling you that every slide deck on this site is the right one for you to choose. In fact, you have to know your audience. You have to know, am I presenting to a startup, you know, fintech, cryptocurrency, you know, cutting edge, or am I presenting to the accounting team at Walmart, right? Maybe a little bit more traditional, old school. And that is up to you to determine what kind of slide deck you want to use. Now, templates help us to get there, right? Templates help us get started and have an idea of what to put on each slide. So let's just go ahead and look at a slide deck. And I'm going to pick a pretty simple one. This one is called Simple Corporate Slides. And when I first click into it, I can now click go to preview and download. And this is my favorite part about this site. Before I download it, I can look at all of the slides and determine if this is a template that I want to use. So when I go into Microsoft PowerPoint and open a new theme or even in Google Slides, those slides are usually blank, right? They have the color around them, but they're blank. One thing I love about these slide decks is that they have suggested ideas and formats and patterns, and there's a lot of extra tools, right? Diagrams, tables, maps. So I'm jumping through this one very quickly so that you can get an idea of what kinds of information are in here. But I did find this green one that I thought would work well for Deloitte. And it's important to note a couple of things about templates, right? So on this site, you probably want to look at the color of the template and just go with the color it already is. Are you able to change the colors? Yes, but not as easily as you could inside PowerPoint or Google Slides themes where they give you 5 color choices. In these, the color that you see is easiest to use as is. However, any template can be mastered. You have to master the template. You have to be in charge of the template. But you can't say, well, the template told me to. Okay, so when I go to preview this one, which is I think called Simple Colorful, I can see that there's actually different colors on each slide. But when I download this template and open it, are we all still seeing that? Hopefully we're all still seeing this template. Great, nodding. I can see that once I enable editing and I look at the potential slides that are available here, all of the slides in the template created by Slides Carnival are actually the base design is green. And so these slides are colored using the design tool. All right, the design tool allows us to change the colors if we do format background. And then we can change the color here. Okay, so mastering the template is up to you. You have to determine which template you want to use and how to use it. But if you go through these template slides, you'll see that there are some pages that have images. And images are a great way to include that visual branding that we were talking about. So bringing in our topic, but bringing it in a way that uses a visual or a photo instead of another bullet point. Now, I happen to know that the images for this slide deck are from Unsplash. And I know that because at the end of the deck here, at the end of every deck, oh, look, this one is actually deaf to the stock photo. It's not Unsplash. The slide deck includes a credits page, an extra resources page. Here are the colors that I mentioned, the color schemes. And at the very end, they have all these extra emoji and infographic that you can use, and you can edit them. So this is such an amazing resource to be able to have. But what's important to note about Slides Carnival is it's 100% free for personal or commercial use. He asks that you credit it, but it is not required. There is a Creative Commons license for these slide decks. So that's critical, right? I think that is wonderful because if I can, I'm going to say slides by Slides Carnival, maybe on the first slide or the last slide. But if it doesn't work, then I'm not going to credit that. Knowing what is available to you to use for free is essential. So let's look at a photo website that I like for great photos and images that are Creative Commons licensed. That's really important. It's called Unsplash, and I learned about it through Slides Carnival. So with Unsplash, I can search for any type of image that might go with my topic. So here I've typed in fintech. I think I have my screen down to 75, so I'll include that. I'll increase that. What I see here are images of fintech, but what's important to note is these images are uploaded by the creator and they're tagged by the creator. So the tags may be creative, right? So if I'm looking for fintech, I may not be able to find the right type of image that I want to use by typing in fintech. I might need to type in technology, or I might need to type in, health and finance and see if something comes up for that. So as I go through these images, I'm thinking of several things. One, does it fit my topic? This one clearly doesn't work for finance and tech. Two, does it fit my color scheme? And three, does it fit the size? Okay, so this one is really nice because it is horizontal. So it'd make a great back, an image that's the entire background. However, if I'm thinking of visual contrast, I need to be aware that if I use this as the entire background of a slide design, the words are not going to contrast very well unless I also put the words on a solid color background. So these are just some things I'm thinking about as I gather images. So I'm just going to download several images, and my tip to you is to gather a lot of images before you go over to your slide deck design, because you can get lost in the black hole of looking for images and looking for slide decks forever. Now we see here that a little pop-up comes up that says say thanks. Now this is a suggestion. Of course, this website is free, so they'd love it if you say thanks on your slide deck or if you donate. But it's important to note that if you read the licensing for this website, these are Creative Commons images that are free for you to use without citation. Now, that doesn't mean that I can take this image and then put it on a canvas and sell it on Etsy for $50, right, for art for someone's living room. But it does mean, so I can't make a profit off of the image, but it does mean that I can use it in my slide deck without crediting that. Something else that I like to do is thinking about my slide color, my theme. I might type in blue and see what comes up for blue. Now, these are some great images. I'm thinking about how I can type on top of them. Maybe one like this, I would only put text in the bottom third portion. And I'm just going to give myself a lot of options, right, for contrast as well as for texture. Sometimes you just also type in the word texture, so blue texture. This one, that's pretty cool. It gives a little bit more than just a solid background, but I'm definitely going to be able to create contrast in the visual imaging. Okay, so I hope that you are on Slides Carnival and that you are on Unsplash and you are downloading these things. And learning to use the Slides Carnival template is a bit of a chore in and of itself if you've never used templates. But templates are the way to go, right? If we try to make a brand new slide presentation in Microsoft PowerPoint, and we just choose one of the, so first of all, if we choose one of these presentation types that have always been used, we can't preview it, that's A. And B, once we create it, it doesn't give us, it just gives us a bunch of blank slides. That is so much more work to think about, what should I put here? How should I format it? Which slide should have a picture? And that's why I like Slides Carnival, because I'm downloading 30 slides with ideas, and then I'm replacing them with my content, my images, and I become the master of those slides. And more than that, it's less likely that my audience has seen that slide deck. It's more likely that they've seen the Google Slides or the PowerPoint slides template that I get here. So I'm going to avoid using those. Now, recently, the Slides Carnival guy has added some really cool stuff at the end of each slide deck, including a timeline, a roadmap, look at that, a Gantt chart, a SWOT analysis, and a business model canvas. I love these extra slides, and I know that I can learn how to work those slides, and I can learn how to replace the images, right? Sometimes it's simply right-clicking, change picture, and choosing the picture that I want. And sometimes it is using this design and then format the background here, okay? So there is some work to do if you're not familiar with using templates, but that design work is so valuable in showcasing to the client branding, consideration. The effort does not go unnoticed. Now I want to take you back over to our slide deck and see where we are. And you can see here my slide deck not in presentation mode, that I actually have these notes down here that I use. And let's look at our next slide. This is a great place to stop and say, are there any questions so far? And then I'll take a little drink.
Hi, I just wanted to, Laura Ewing, with the deck that you just showed, was that from Slide Carnival?
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you.
The green deck is from Slides Carnival. This one here is called CAD Wall. The white deck that I just showed, this one, the white and gray, is a PowerPoint slides deck.
Thank you.
So this
I have a question, Allison. So
yes.
Sometimes we have a lot of content to share or ideas. So what is your view in terms of like, and I know that people retain just probably 3 or 4 ideas, not more. So do you have a best practices to either break the presentation in 2, break the groups, or how to deal with a lot of content that you want to share?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when there's a lot of options for what kind of presentation we're giving. So that's the first step. Am I giving a 45-minute presentation? If I'm giving a 45-minute presentation, then absolutely I'm going to have lots of slides and lots of content. So we want to use the chunking, right? We want to use the idea of chunking, that there are sort of like if we were reading a book and there was part 1, part 2, part 3. And so we can provide that chunking with our roadmap. So it's a higher level version of our transition slide. So instead of a transition for each main point, I'm going to have a transition for each chunk or each section. And for each of those sections, I want to provide perhaps a new roadmap for the main points in that section. And then I want to make sure to provide a question slide like this at the end of each chunk. Now, the shorter our presentation, then the more micro lens we have, right? And the fewer slides we have. And the shorter our presentation, I think that's actually when we get in the weeds and sometimes give ourselves the most panic about what do I put on the slides and what do I not put on the slides. For a 10-minute presentation, we simply do not need that many slides that say our main points. The slides should provide our charts, our tables, our infographics, and image, a diagram. The longer the presentation, the more slides, the more chunking that we need. So what Patricio is asking about, or what I would call it, is architecture. So build the house with the architecture. The architecture is the title, the roadmap, the big chunks, the sectioning off. And then you perform that sectioning off, just as I'm doing now, by taking a deliberate break, creating a pause, asking for questions, and then demonstrating, okay, let's move on. Okay, that's a great question. Those are great questions. And as a speaker, it's great to be able to take a breath and get a drink of water. And also if something's gone a little haywire and they say, I can't see this, or this has happened, that's really helpful in Zoom, right? I don't want to go 45 minutes with an error and you're not seeing the slide that I'm on because somebody didn't speak up. So putting in those moments to take a breath also help us, because we are performing as we're presenting, which is a whole other webinar, right? About how to perform our slides. Okay, if we don't have any more questions, I'm going to move us on.
Allison, it looks like Sujit has a question about a slide carnival deck that matches the UT scheme. I don't know if you have that at the tips of your fingers right now.
I do not have that at the tip of my fingers. However, what I will say to you that could work really well is a slide like this one, a slide deck like this one, okay? When we go over here and we can see it's all green and it's, all different colors. When I go over to colors, this particular template allows me to change the colors. I will say not every Slides Carnival template allows you to change the colors. So I'm on the design or the formatting section and I choose more colors. And then I go over here to custom. And here is where I can type in the R, G, and B of the UT colors, which I don't have at the tip of my fingers right here. Do you know what it is, Deidre? Okay, but look, that's pretty close, right?
Yeah, I'm typing in the chat right now.
Okay, I'm gonna see it here in the chat. 191.87.0. I was pretty close. 191. Let me get here. Oh, okay. 87.0. Okay. Now I'm all UT orange. And then I have to go through and do that for every one, but PowerPoint saves my most recent colors. So I can then go through and I can choose that orange, and then where I'm on the text, I would want to do the same thing, but you can see the orange is saved for me. PowerPoint gives me that. And so these are the types of things you can do in Google Slides. You can do it in Canva. This is an example of you mastering the template, right? And there are also contrasting colors. So we have the UT orange, but we also have a gray and a black and a white. So we can add those colors in so every single slide isn't orange, but we use those multiple contrasting colors. And I also know that UT has suggested fonts. And so as we think about using the UT colors, it would also be a great idea to know what are those fonts, because we don't want to go halfway in representing their brand, right? So that's why UT has provided a template for you that has the fonts and the colors. But as we think about even using the UT template, we can add in slides that have different formats. So UT is giving you this template, but you're the master of the template. So that would be my suggestion to you. And for the Slides Carnival slides, sometimes we don't know if the template can be changed, if all the features can be changed unless we download it. But there's actually a way to change every single template. It just means going even more into the template design. And those of you who like that deep dive, watch a YouTube on how to format a PowerPoint template and take it away. Okay, great question.
Thank you.
I'm going to move us forward and talk now about pace and parsity. Okay, throw in some vocabulary words right there. So we're pacing our performance and we're parsing out our ideas. How do we do that? Well, I want to provide for you first this sample slides outline. And so maybe this is a great screenshot, right, for you to take here. And of course, it'll be here for you if you want to rewatch. But this is the architecture that I'm describing, that we tend to think of our slide deck and think about number 4, right? Content slides, content slides. But I want to suggest to you that these other slides are what make it user-friendly, that what provide the you attitude. So first we have the title slide. And the title slide you're very familiar with, but the title slide should have a great title, an interesting title, every person who's speaking, and we should anticipate it's possible the title slide will be up for several minutes. We don't know who might come into the meeting, or they might say, oh, let's give it another 3 minutes. The title slide could be up there. So whatever we have on it should also represent or give a good idea of what we're going to learn. Next, I want to say to you, you should start speaking over the title slide. While the title slide is there, as I did today, you need to say, why are we here? What's the need? What's the solution I'm going to bring to you? Speak over the title slide, then introduce yourself. The roadmap is our thesis, right? It's our table of contents, the thesis of the report or the thesis, table of contents of this presentation. I use thesis, carefully, because some of us know a thesis as our single main point, and some of us know a thesis as a list of ideas. And here I mean the roadmap is our list of ideas that will be covered. Then you share your bluff, bottom line up front, or blot, bottom line on top. We're giving away the punchline because we know people are going to be curious about it. And if we tell them what it is, they're going to better conceptualize all of the other stuff that I share. If they have the macro lens, they're going to better understand the micro lens of the elements of the presentation. Number 4 here is your content slides. This number will vary. Is it a 5-minute presentation? Is it a 45-minute presentation? And then the last 2 slides we're going to cover are key takeaways and last glance. Your key takeaways are your opportunity to pitch or sell or give a call to action. What are the things they need to know? Now, this actually mirrors in some ways our roadmap slide. And it's the main ideas that I covered, or the main things I want you to know, or my call to action. So take it as you will. But this is our conclusion without writing out a conclusion. And we're not saying conclusion because we're not concluding, we're pitching. We're trying to keep the momentum going. So key takeaways makes everything sound like important and key. And then we have our last glance slide. And this slide, much like our title slide, we should prepare to be able to stand in front of it, to talk over it, and to have it exist there long after I've given the main ideas, but in case I do a Q&A or something like that. So the last glance slide is the final slide of your presentation. And how many of us have seen a presentation where the person keeps clicking and then they go, oops, and they show what I call the black slide of death? Don't go to the black slide. The black slide, showing the black slide is like, showing your undergarments or something. No, you don't want to be caught with the black slide. Your last glance slide provides a stopping point. You know it's the stopping point, and it can be on the screen for as many minutes as it takes to answer Q&A or to change presenters, or while everybody chats and files out of the room. It's our lasting brand impression. What do we need to know about the last glance slide? Well, what do you think? Also, let's look at this slide. What do you think I'm going to show you? I'm going to show you two things side by side, right? So I'm giving you a comparison. You know in advance we're going to make a comparison. The last glance slide could say thank you, provide contact info. That's what you'll see on Slides Carnival. Slides Carnival provides a thank you, contact info slide. It could include an image. It could be only an image, right? It could be one of those blue texture slides. It could be the logo or the brand. It is whatever you want it to be, except it's not key data or points, and it's not the black slide of death, okay? So it should not be the key takeaway slide. The last glance slide does not introduce new ideas. The last glance slide needs to be clean and simple in a similar way that the title slide is clean and simple. And as we show the last glance slide, we need to be prepared to talk over our last glance slide and give our final thoughts. This is our wrap up. We don't click onto the last glance slide and go, that's it. No, we're prepared. We're prepared to say one or two more things on top of the last glance slide, the same way that we spoke while the title slide was up. So how do we pace ourselves? How do we parse out how many things to go on a slide? So what you'll see on this slide is animation and content. My recommendation to you as a rule of thumb is to have 3 key ideas on the slides and verbally tell the rest of that. But when you have those key ideas on the slides, think about how to creatively format them. Can I use an infographic? Can I use shapes? Can I use an image rather than the standard bullet point, bullet point, bullet point? Because this is what keeps people interested. When the last slide and the next slide are different, and then the next one is different too. They just give us, it's like driving down a beautiful street and looking at houses that look different and thinking, oh, what beautiful architecture those houses have. That's what we're providing here as well, because our visual presentation is intended to compel people to keep watching and not zone out. And if I saw 5 bullet points, 5 bullet points, 5 bullet points on every slide in a row, of course I would zone out. I'm only human. We have to remember that slides are our backup singers. I'm the main singer. I'm Taylor Swift, and you're here to see me sing. And the slides are my backup singers. So sometimes if I need to take a breath and take a drink, I have my backup singers there. There's something for you to look at. But the slides are not the main show. The main show is what I, the expert, have to say. And if I let the slides control me, everybody in the room can see that. Instead, I control the slides, I control the information, and I have the really key pieces of information that need to be discussed. So how do I make sure that I don't put too much information on the slide itself? My key tip is to use the notes section, and I'm going to show you how that looks on my slide. As I work, as I create slides, I put a lot of information down in the notes section. When you open PowerPoint, the notes sections are way down here and you can't even see that they're available. So all you need to do is open up the notes section and you can type the things that you want to say, and this will definitely help you while you're practicing. If you want to present and be able to see the notes at the same time, you either need a second screen or a second device. Okay, but if you do have that, you'll be able to see presenter view and you could read your notes as you go. And I've got my notes right here with me on paper. So sometimes old school works as well. And we do that by going to print and selecting notes pages. And then it's going to print the slide with my notes. This is something I like to do, especially if I'm leaving town to do a presentation. I'll take the paper notes with me and I make a lot of suggestions or comments to myself on the paper notes. And I always have those with me, which is a great backup in case technology fails, right? I have something on paper. So I'm not a paper person most of the time, but with big slide decks, I like it. So maybe you would too. Let's get back to our extras here, and we are on the the last one. Here's where we level up and we just look at animations and transition. And so what kind of movement should we have on slides? This is something that I think a lot of people wrestle with. How much movement should I have? Am I going to nauseate my audience? Is there anyone in the audience who would actually be have a medical reaction to too much movement or flashing? I definitely need to be aware of that to be inclusive to my whole audience. But at the same time, as we've seen, we can use these things effectively to pace the presentation. As you can see now, I've got another slide with side A and side B, and you can tell there's information that's going to come onto the slide. But first, I'm going to talk about it for a minute, and then when I'm ready, I'm going to show it to you. So animation is when each line or image can move or change based on a click or a timer. And the ones that I suggest to you are professional, are the ones appear, fly in, fade, and float in. And these are green entrance animations. There are orange effects and there are red exit animations. And most of those you really don't need. You just need a few of the entrance animations that you know how to use, and you use them effectively. So these are the ones that I think still have that professional tone to them. What is a transition? A transition is movement between slides, okay? And there are lots of ways to move between slides. Some of the common ones are push, fade, and wipe. And I want to show those to you really quickly. So I'm going to go out of presenter mode again and go over to transitions. And today I've been using fade, but this is what it looks like if I use push. And this is what it looks like if I use wipe. Those are pretty subtle. Here's fade. It's very simple. Okay, so the movement on the slides is really important. You know what? I think that I labeled this number 5. I just noticed. So since we're all here, let's just change it and make sure that you know we're on number 6. So when we think about animation or we think about transitions, these can be useful for pacing our presentation, but we cannot go overboard. And there's 2 reasons why we don't want to go overboard. The people in the room don't necessarily want to see how fancy we can get with it. And if we get too fancy, it can be distracting, right? It can create too many clicks. This is especially important when we're working in teams and one person's advancing the slide deck while the other members of the team are speaking. Too much animation can be difficult to cue the person to change the slide or to click. So we want to lower the amount of animation. However, we want to know that it's good to use it because it helps with pacing. It helps us understand when to bring information onto the slide and when to bring the audience along with us. We can put more information on a slide, but because we've paced it, it's less overwhelming. Okay, so this is an example of when I have more items of information on a slide, but I pace them using animation. And the second reason why we don't use animation too much is because it takes a long time. So we want to use it effectively and sparingly and not overuse it because we don't want to burden the audience, burden our teammate, or burden ourselves. But let's talk about these transition slides. Now, different from transitions between slides, what I'm talking about here are the yellow slides you've seen today, those chapter slides or transition slides. I like to call these signpost slides. It kind of goes with the roadmap theme, right? Have you ever driven from Texas to New Mexico? It's like it's just road and just road. There's no signs, there's no gas stations, there's not even an emergency phone. You're just driving across, what is that, West Texas. And it can be very challenging. If we don't have signpost slides that let our audience know what piece of content we're on, then it can be very difficult for them to stay with us. So those transition slides, if you like them, can be added and used as signposts to let our audience know when we're moving along in the content. But when we show those transition slides, we can change speakers, but we don't want to speak too long over a transition slide. So how can you level up? How can you make your slides the best possible? One of the key ways to make your presentation stand out is just go beyond the default. So we don't have to push ourselves to be amazing or fantastic, but we want to go beyond the default. And we want to remember that we are the stars of the show, and the information that we have to share is the most important and engaging information. So what are your key takeaways for today? Never forget that bluff. Put that bottom line up front. Do all of your planning before you start working on your slides. Your audience is king. They're the most important. What do they care about? What do they want to know? Use those templates to make things easier. Consider building your template as a form of architecture for your presentation and for your audience. It's nice to look at beautiful architecture. Pacing with animation can keep your audience engaged, but these extras should be added as time allows because they can be quite time consuming. So here we are, we've arrived at my last glance slide, and I'd be happy to take any additional questions. And I would love to work with you on your presentations or on conflict resolution or on job searching. And you can always book a coaching session with me by going to the MBA Plus Canvas page, or you can email me at drallisonalford@gmail.com. Deidre?
Yes, thank you so much. I hope you all learned as much as I did today. This was a great presentation. So feel free to stick around and ask any direct questions. Otherwise, we will see you all soon.